Thanks everyone for inviting me to do this. Um, for this next part, I'd like you all to sit down and relax. Um, I'm gonna read you a story. So it's really very important that, if at all possible, you put your feet up. And it's okay if you fall back asleep, or if you want to do something else while you're listening, like draw or knitting. I'm ready to start, but first, I want to tell you that this is from a book that I'm writing about mushrooms, and the narrator is a button mushroom. The bluet mushroom always says, "Blue is the best color because it is the wettest." And he's right. Of all the colors, blue is the most laid back. It's as chill as cyanide and blue jeans. It relaxes by cooling itself in tropical waters or floating above pristine mountaintops. Blue is the strongest, most peaceful, and cleverest color. Blue is the most popular favorite color. Just ask the satin bowerbird. The blue mealy mushroom's cap never opens. It encases its gills completely. Blue meanies keep their spores safe in a pouch, and they never drop a tail. They have no sweetness to bribe woodland creatures to tear them open and liberate their spores, but they do have an irresistible color. There's not much below the forest canopy that's blue, so even a faint azure tinge on the forest floor can ruffle feathers with admiration and desire. And the blue meanie is blue. It's the color of a summer sky, of butterflies and bruises. It's a particular perfect blue. You know that blue that gives you shivers? It's not a cold blue nor a cold shiver. It's a warm, acidic, murky blue that gives you frisson. It's mouthwater blue. It's blue with a subtle heft, with a quiet bulk and nuance. It's a blue with twang. It's a blue with swagger. It tastes like ultraviolet electric blue raspberry. It's a deep blue, but by deep I don't mean dark. It's lighter than it is dark. I mean a blue deep enough you could fall into it, because it's a hazy blue you need to squint to see through. The blue meanie is a holy mushroom because of its intense blueliness. The female bowerbird is impressed when male birds present them with the color blue. The male bowerbird is a master naturalist and forager. He collects with a discerning eye. He curates, he displays. His hoard tells a story of the past and the future. It tells of his good taste and skills of observation. It tells of his luck, and it shows off his understanding of the ecology of the forest and his wealth of time not spent struggling or competing with other birds, because he is the best. His collection says, "Hey baby, I notice good things, and I noticed you. I want to find treasures for you. Do you like sapphires? I'll bring you back only the best, the bluest. Look, bounty surrounds me. I know the story of the jungle, and we are at its center. These seeds, they're for you. They represent fertility. These flowers, they're for you. They represent our growing wealth into the future. This curious bark, it's home to billions of tiny creatures, and it's a promise that our eggs will never be snakes' nests. Look at these mushrooms. They turn bluer when I pierce them open with my sharp beak. They represent the exceptional bliss of our descendants' prolific journey yonder. Our hatchlings will be as wonderful as these gems. I will defend you and those who spring off from our Carulean union." Portobello would hate this. He's a cranky critic who's made it his job to point out hyperbole. He liked the part where the mushroom spores are inadvertently liberated by the bird, but mycomorphism enrages him because he thinks it's blasphemously unscientific. You can't actually prove what another organism is thinking, but I'm a storyteller. So I have a license to use this tool. And I don't mean to say that animal experience is just the same as ours. That's impossible. They have very different sensory strategies than we do, but that our behavior is just like theirs, governed by genetic impulses, catalyzed by hormone and environmental stimulus. It's unromantic maybe, but we all have experience, and it's all as rich and nuanced, only different. Just as we'll never know if we both see the same color when we gaze into the blue. We will never know if we feel the same thing that we call sadness or hunger or song. But it's clear that many of us do see blue, feel sadness, hunger, and song. Well, hi everyone, I'm Alexis. I'm the director of the Ayatona Artist Research Program. I'm an artist and a writer, and I'm an amateur mycologist, which is sort of an unflattering term for somebody who's a naturalist who studies mushrooms. I'm a mushroom hunter, a reader of mushroom books, and a member of Mushroom Club. I'm really a student of the mushroom. I'm also a new member of Creative Mornings, and I'm so looking forward to participating in these events. I really feel like I'm in the right place. So this morning I'm going to talk to you about biophilia. Now, this is a word that, well, it means a lot to me. I've used the word to brand my business, but it also describes almost every aspect of my life. So biophilia is the innate tendency to focus on life and life-like processes. It means the urge to associate with other living things. So it's a term that was popularized by Edward Osborne Wilson in his book Biophilia, or the Biophilia hypothesis. And now Wilson is considered to be the greatest biologist alive. His book Biophilia, well, it describes his own biophilia as the awe that he experiences when he's observing non-human organisms, and also the joy he gets about or from learning about them. And his worldview is deeply informed by biology and science, but his insight is always sort of bumping up against the mystical. And this is what I really love about studying biology. There's always this underlying magic to it. I just finished reading Biophilia, and I can't tell you how much I really loved it. I'm going to share with you some things that he says in the book. So he says, the greater the knowledge, the deeper the mystery, and the more we seek knowledge to create more mystery. This catalytic reaction inboard human trait draws us perpetually forward in search of new places and new life. So when I started studying mushrooms, I think I really thought it would be a sort of quick affair, like maybe 6 months of obsessive fixation, and then I would find the edges of mushroom knowledge, and maybe I'd be satisfied that I knew everything I wanted to know about them. But this just isn't how things work. The mushroom kingdom is, well, it's barely been studied compared to the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom, partly because the church used to discourage the study of mushrooms because they thought they were evil. And this is partly why, if you go into the forest and you see a whole lot of mushrooms, most of them won't have common names. And a lot of them won't have Latin names because they haven't yet been scientifically, oh, I can see someone's cat. I love when that happens. Most of them haven't been scientifically described. And I think this mystery is part of what I really like about them. There's room for me to invent names for them. And there's always this possibility of like a new discovery. So when I started noticing them, I picked up the National Audubon Guide to Mushrooms. It's written by Gary Linkoff. I read it cover to cover, and I put down the amazing novel that I was reading, and I didn't read fiction again for 6 years. I just devoured mushroom field guides and textbooks. So since then, I've started reading other things, but I've found that there is no edge of what we can learn about mushrooms in sight. There's always more to learn. Oh, and the more I learn about them, the more I learn, well, I want to say about myself, but I don't mean like I'm learning who I am. I'm learning what I am. And I really love learning about non-human sensory experiences because it lets me notice like the edges, the limits of my own sensory experiences, um, and to kind of see the like ridiculous arbitrariness of experiencing the world in this like completely audio visual way when other organisms are having equally as vivid an experience with totally different senses. Um, I've got this other thing, and I've been calling him Wilson, but I think people call him EO. I think that's how he's referred to. So he says, humanity is exalted, not because we are so far above other living creatures, but because knowing them elevates the very concept of life. So yeah, I really like his take on things. I feel like he's describing the things that I've really enjoyed in life. So mushroom hunting taught me that the easiest way for me to feel normal and happy is simply to go into the forest and step off the path and explore. And what happens is that these parts of my brain that are sort of dormant when I'm in the city following the sidewalk, they're awakened because I need to use them to decide which way to go next. And I really have to use my entire body to navigate this really three-dimensional space. Um, I use my nose, although my nose has led me around in circles following a mushroom that I've already put in my basket. But I also have to like duck under branches and climb over things and, figure out how to wade through a stream, and have to really remember how I got here, where I am, and where I'm going so I don't get lost. And while I'm there, I'm compulsively seeking out mushrooms. I have trouble letting anything else into my attention, and certainly struggle to carry a non-mushroom related conversation with someone while I'm in the forest. I sort of go into this mushroom trance. And I notice my brain inventing superstition. Like when I first go out, if I decide what I really want to find, there's a really good chance that I will find it. And I think that's sort of called like manifesting destiny. But I think what's happening is I'm turning on that pattern recognition in my brain. And I've learned that if I'm walking this way and I'm noticing a mushroom that might be like pretty common and not that exciting, but I'm noticing it, that I should change my course and go that way, because more often than not, there'll be something really exciting just behind it. And the best one, this happens every single time. The best things that I find them in the few moments after I've given up, but before I quit. And I notice that this works everywhere in life. So what's really happening is like I'm on a scavenger hunt and it's really fun. And mushroom season's in the fall, and I do it so much in the fall that all through the winter I dream about mushroom hunting, and I get the same sort of endorphins when I find a mushroom in my dream as when I do in the forest. So in the last couple of years, I've become a bird nerd, and this is really very different from being a mushroom hunter, in that, when I'm outside, I cover more ground and I'm looking up instead of looking down. And every time I identify an individual bird, I get these like video game like endorphins. I guess it's dopamine. It's like ding, ding, ding. And I'm discovering this entirely new set of brain chemistry. And like, it sounds really weird when I say it that way, but birding really is a far more mainstream pastime than mushrooming. And if you want to become a better birder, I suggest using the Cornell University's free apps on your phone. I use eBird every day to keep a list of the birds that I've seen, and also to see the birds that the people in my area saw this week. And when I'm out in the forest, I'm listening. And if I hear a bird and I think I know what it is, but I'm not totally sure, I use Merlin, which is a free digital field guide that's got pictures of the birds, but it's also got beautiful recordings of all of their songs. So I listen to the bird and I play the song and I compare them. So I'm always training my ear. And I'm always listening to the biophony, which is the collective sounds of the non-human organisms in the landscape. All of the traffic and the hammering and the music and the airplanes that are constantly going overhead. That's the anthropophony. But everything else, the birds and the insects and the trees moving, that's the biophony. So being constantly tuned in, there's my train, there's the anthropophany, being tuned in to this sort of really hyper aware state of listening. Well, it's really addictive, and it feels great. So yeah, I find that they're really different experiences. When I'm out, if I've seen a bird and I want to watch it, I want to observe it. Maybe I want to get a photo of it to help ID it later, and I have to be really quiet. I never have to sneak up on a mushroom. Just sneak up on the bird, and I'm probably holding my breath. And I'm getting really strong holding my long lens for long periods of time. And what's happening is I'm being a hunter. I think that we've evolved to do these things, to be hunters and gatherers. And it's really satisfying to tap into these sort of primal urges and abilities that we have. And this is biophilia. So as an artist, I feel like my job is to express the value of wildlife. And I do this not by spending money, but by investing my attention. I find that, if I seek out and pay attention to and like interpret and learn about and teach about a non-human organism, the people who are watching me, they learn to notice that organism too and to value it. So in his book Biophilia, Wilson says, to the degree that we come to understand other organisms, we will place greater value on them and ourselves. So I feel like the most successful things I've done as an artist are just to, well, be an obsessive observer. And when that inspires other people to go out into the forest and fill a basket with the things that they think are treasures, and then to, get joy out of looking at them, paying attention to them, and telling each other. I think my job as an artist is really to give people permission to indulge in their own curiosities and to connect with nature. So as a residency director, my job is literally to facilitate other artists' biophilia. And I do this because I want to encourage them to direct their audience's attention to the natural world. Because I feel like if we were all in the habit of doing this, of noticing the wildlife and talking about it, it would be easier for us to kind of agree on what it is to be human and to, see what we have in common with each other. And I think we'd also have more of a respect for wildlife rather than seeing them as resources to be exploited. So I do this by taking artists out into the forest, and we listen to the birds and we learn the names of the mushrooms, and we look at what's living under rocks, and we go into research labs and look down scientists' microscopes at the tiny organisms that are living around us all the time. I really love taking artists into research labs because, like research biologists, they specialize in a really specific problem that they're looking for a solution to, that they might focus on for their entire careers. And this hyper focus creates joy and bliss, and they're feelings that are really well communicated between artists and scientists. So I think my job is to validate artists' biophilia in the hopes that they will spread it. So this morning I want to show you a couple images of art made by artists whose creative practice is just, really powerfully driven by their biophilia. And I think what they all have in common is that they each represent like a really intimate experience between an artist and a non-human organism. So I'm going to start with Jenny Kendler. My slide hasn't moved. There we go. I'm going to start with Jenny Kendler. She's an artist and an environmental activist in New York. If you haven't seen her work before, I really think you should go and check out her website. She's got a beautiful portfolio website with. She's done so much stuff, and it's all like really intelligent, well informed, and just wildly fun. So I want to tell you about this piece. So I've never met Jenny, but I imagine that she was sitting outside and she was listening. She was tuned in to the Biophilia, and she was noticing the hummingbirds. And the hummingbirds make a lot of noise. They do like giggles and clicks, but the most sort of intense noise that they make is this constant hum with their wings. And I bet that she wanted a closer listen. And she noticed that the hummingbirds have this like irresistible desire to check out red things. And this is why you can lure them to your house with those plastic red feeders, and we fill them with sugar water. So she painted her ear red and put nectar in her ear, and then she waited. I think she sat there for hours, like 3 or 4 hours. She stood there until a tiny little hummingbird came and checked out her ear. And I can imagine what that would have sounded like. And then this tiny little bird took his tiny, very sharp little beak and put it inside her ear and flicked out its tongue and drank nectar. I'd love to meet her one day and ask her what did it sound like. If you want, check out her website. I think the moderator will put it in the chat because there's a video of that happening. Oh, I want to read something else. No, stay back there. All right, so in his book Biophilia, E.O. Wilson says, the aim of art is not to show how or why an effect is produced. That would be science, but literally to produce it. And not just by any cry of the heart, it requires mental discipline, no less than in science. What counts is not the greatness of the emotion, but the intensity of the artistic process, the pressure under which the fusion takes place. Okay, next I want to tell you about Alyssa Ellis. She's a botanical performance artist in Calgary. I don't mean that she uses plants in her performances in a gallery for people. She performs for plants. Now, this is a piece she did a few years ago where she collected plants from office buildings that were sort of stuck inside, and they existed as decoration for people. But Alyssa is really interested in the plant's own experience and intelligence. So she would collect these plants and take them on a tour of Calgary and introduce them to the important plants around town. And if the people who belonged to the plants insisted on coming with her, she would not direct the performance to the humans. It was really for the plants. So Alyssa does amazing things like hook plants up to lie detectors like Cleve Baxter did, and she reads them stories, and she plays them music that was intended for plants. She's a really interesting artist and a plant person. She's into botanical poison and plant horror literature. So I suggest you follow her on Instagram, and I think her Instagram handle's in the chat. Oh, and next I want to tell you about Cole Swanson. He's an artist and an environmental activist in Toronto. He's a Psi artist, really. And well, this image it's a before shot of a piece that he did in India, and I want you to just notice the discoloration, sort of natural discoloration of the walls. So what he did was He collected mineral pigments from the area, and he made natural pigments directly from the land. And then he invited people who lived there to use the pigment to sort of engage with a normally overlooked organism, well, all of these organisms that lived on the walls around them. So he was directing their attention to this like totally ubiquitous, but usually ignored discoloration that's actually like wild and thriving ecosystem of bacteria and lichen and microflora. So he was helping them notice that the organisms they shared their city with were really quite beautiful. And while they worked, he talked about these organisms. Sorry, I'm distracted because my image isn't what I wanted it to be. So, well, he was teaching them about how the minerals that they were painting with would literally nourish these organisms. That this is what these organisms were thriving on. So right now, Cole's piece is, he's working on a new one of these at the Gladstone Hotel in Toronto with local pigments from Toronto. So next I want to tell you about Mel. Melissa Fisher, she's an English artist. She's really interested in our relationships to our bodies. So this is a piece, Microbial Me. It's a piece that she did while she was a student. She was learning how to work with sterile technique in the lab. So they were pouring agar into petri dishes to grow cultures. And at the same time, she was taking a sculpture class. She was learning to make casts. And she thought, well, why don't I make an agar cast of my face and grow the bacteria and the microbes that are living on my face on this three-dimensional scaffolding. So this piece lives in an incubator. It's been installed at the Eden Project for the last 5 years, and it's always changing. The bacteria, I imagine they're kind of doing battle with each other, fighting for resources. But what's really spectacular about it is that she's made totally visible something that's like totally ubiquitous, but usually in the presence of human immune system, like completely invisible. So right now she's working, she's studying neurology. She's making projects about brains, and check out her Instagram. She's a really fun artist. Oh, and here, this is my last piece I want to tell you about. This is Carol Padburg. She's an interspecies textile artist in Connecticut. And her piece, Mycelial Meetings, is one where she invites her audience to connect with mushrooms. So mycelium, it's the usually invisible body of a fungus that produces mushrooms as fruit. So she weaves these body coverings and then inoculates them with oyster mushrooms that fruit into these spectacular displays. And then she invites her audience to wear the art against their skin and to meditate on the interactions between the mushrooms and their bodies, but also the mushrooms and the microorganisms living on and inside their bodies. So if you're a biophile and you're thinking about doing your Masters of Fine Arts, I suggest checking out the NOMAD MFA program that Carol runs out of the University of Padburg. Every year, her class of eco artists, they travel to artist residency programs all around the world to produce their work rather than staying in their studios at school. I really wish that this is how I had done my MFA. And if you haven't read Wilson's book, Biophilia, I really do recommend it. He talks about the kinship of art and science and how the elegance of both are part of human biology, and we've evolved to create them. And it's just a totally delicious read. And if you want to get involved with other biophiles in Ottawa, we have lots of amazing clubs. The Ottawa Field Naturalist Club offers guided tours to look at wildlife and loads of lectures. We also have an entomology club, an urban beekeeping club, loads of gardening clubs, and a botanical illustration club. But you don't need, oh, maybe I'll say this. So right now, all of the clubs in the world are existing like this online. So it's a really good time to join a club in a different city or a different country and meet people who are into what you're into, but who are far away. So you don't need a club or a book to indulge in your biophilia. Um, so many of you put your hands up saying you've got lots of plants at home. Have you ever drawn your plants? Like, it's an amazing way to really focus and observe something, is to draw it and question, like, what are all these parts? What is it doing? Also, it's terribly cold today, but if you wrap up warm, go for a walk and notice and maybe take a list of all of the organisms that you can see, and then do it again tomorrow and compare them. Like, I promise you, it's fascinating. Well, if you would like to study wildlife and ecology with me, the Ayatona Artist Research Program is accepting applications to these programs. They're each online 2-week courses where you would get to study biology with biologists who are all over the world. And we really have so much fun. Check out our website, artayatana.com, for more information. And if you like, follow us on Instagram. We're Ayatana researchers for wildlife observations, book reviews, lots of bio art, and opportunities that you can participate in. And if you want to see my work, we can put some links to me online as well. So thanks for listening to me this morning. I wonder if there are any burning questions that you'd like me to answer.
So Jen Hunter's asking, Alexis, when does your book come out?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, it's called Infamous Fungus, Bedtime Stories for Mushrooms, and it will come out when I found a publisher. But hopefully any minute now.
Yeah, no pressure. You've got a
Max,
following of fans.
What's publishing cost? Can I just ask
Pardon?
that? Like, what do you need as a backing? What is a publishing? I'm out of the loop on publishing. Like, what do you?
Me too. I don't know. It's my first book. So I'm in the stages of polishing off the manuscript and looking for an editor. But because I'm trained as an artist, I don't speak the language, the literary language. So I'm trying to learn that so I don't come off as like a total noob when I do approach a publisher.
Awesome.
So I don't know the answer to your question.
I will await its publishing.
Thank you.
If you will.
Alexis, I'm curious. You talked a lot about all different kinds of species, mushrooms and animals and birds. And now I don't want you to pick your favorite child, but I'm going to make you pick your favorite child. If you had to pick one thing right now that if you spotted outside your door that got you really excited, what would it be?
Well, I've never had a favorite mushroom. I have a favorite mushroom every week. It's whichever one I'm learning about. And I have a few favorite birds, but I'm sort of falling in love with them all the time. But these days I'm really admiring the redpolls that are out my window. And I'm excited. This is the first winter that I've been a serious birder, and there's so many winter birds in Ottawa that I didn't realize lived here. Like, really colorful, amazing. I've got evening grosbeaks on my feeder right now that are bright yellow. Also, last night I noticed that our resident barred owl was hunting under the bird feeder, and I hadn't noticed that he was doing that at night. So I'm going to be watching him. I just adore the barred owl.
Amazing. I love that. I have a question from Scott Simpson. He's asking, have you heard about Bjork's educational program, Biophilia, that was launched alongside her album?
Wait, by educational program, do you mean like a course?
I don't know. Scott, do you want to unmute yourself and let us know what you know about this? It sounds very cool.
Yeah, well, there was a series of apps that were launched at the same time as the album. Each song had its own app that was then housed in a mother app.
Mhm.
And then that was used to launch an educational program. Here, I'll drop the link in the chat.
Please do. I've played
That
with it.
toured a bunch of schools, basically
Cool.
helping children learn, I guess, natural processes, but through playing with the app and music,
Yeah.
and then like finding ways that it was interconnected to nature.
Yeah. I've played with her apps and I really enjoy them, but they're only for Apple, and I don't buy Apple products. But I've also really enjoyed her 3D stuff. You kind of have to like go to a gallery to experience and put on the gear. And I really
I
love
saw her
work.
VR tour in Montreal when she
Yeah.
at an art center. That was
Me
very
too.
awesome. Yeah,
That was great.
Sounds like I could go down a rabbit hole with all this, which I might do a little later today.
Yeah, check it out.
I see that we have Jay who has raised his hand, so let's unmute Jay. I'm sure he has a great question.
Hey, Alexis. Thanks, Maxine.
Hi.
Marwan. This is awesome. Alexis, this has been fantastic. I'm kind of blown away. I just love the way you're mixing it all together, and what you're doing. Your work is just phenomenal.
Thank you.
My question
That's
is,
really kind.
thank you. My question is, so you really focused on these two passions of mushrooms and birds.
Mhm.
Have you had any cool interactions between the two yourself that you want to share about, or that you've had?
You mean both mushrooms and birds at the same time?
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah, I have. I'll tell you. I mean, the story that I read at the beginning is like, no, it was both. It was the birds and the mushrooms. But sometimes when I'm in the forest, I notice mushrooms that are hanging in a tree. And there are lots of squirrels and woodland creatures who like they eat a lot of mushrooms. It's a big part of their diet, but in the winter you can't find them. So they dry them so they can have them in the winter. And I love to find them, and I always admire them, and I never steal them. Usually, well, there was this one time when I approached and I was admiring, it's just at eye level, admiring this rousselet hanging in the tree. And I was expecting to hear the squirrels that when they see you looking at their stash, like they freak out and they scream and they throw sticks at you and they're like, they're really bad tempered. So I was waiting for that. But what happened was I was mobbed by chickadees. 25 chickadees came and they were all like flapping and hovering really right in front of me. And they were doing a song that I had never heard. I mean, part of it was like their alarm call, their chickadee, but they were doing these other songs, and what they were saying was like, "Back off, that's ours," which I thoroughly enjoyed. I wasn't gonna take it anyway. I just thought it was cool.
I feel like I'm not surprised that you'd ask something so lovely. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
He's actually a past Creative Mornings speaker. He did a great talk. I think he was on the theme nature, if I'm remembering correctly.
Really? Oh, great. Oh, I'll go and take a look.
Yeah, a lot in common for sure. I think we have another question, and it's from Marwan.
Oh, great.
Hey, Alexis, thanks so much. You're such a wonderful storyteller. So I hope when you publish your book that there's an audio book associated with it.
I'm so excited to record, to read. Yes, I'll do it.
I have a quick question for you. What does ayatona mean?
Ah, that's a good question. So it's a Sanskrit word that means sense-based. It describes the relationship between a sensory organ and the information that it observes. So the Ayatona research program is designed to help artists have like one-on-one intimate experiences with the world, where they're experiencing it themselves with the guidance of an expert rather than reading from a book. Although I really do love reading books, but that's what the word means. And I haven't found an English word that means that.
All right. I don't think we have any more questions.
Cool. Well,
So
thanks so much for having me today and inviting me to talk about the thing that I really love to talk about.
thank you so much. It was so exciting to get to know you and to hear all your stories. And like Marwan says, like when you talk about something that you're passionate about, like you just light up, and you are a wonderful storyteller. So it was a lot of fun to have you here today. And I really hope to maybe sign up for one of your workshops, or when we get together in human shape, maybe we
Totally.
can take a walk and look at some mushrooms and birds together.
Yep, that's my favorite thing to do. I'm in.
We'll do a big thing. Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Alexis.